Live from the studios of Vermont PBS in Colchester, the 2016 Vermont gubernatorial debates. Tonight, all Democratic candidates debate the top issues of this important election season. Here's moderator Joe Marone.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Democratic primary debate for governor of Vermont, right here on Vermont PBS. I'm Joe Marone, and I'll be moderating tonight's debate between the 5 candidates on the ballot in this year's primary, all vying to become Vermont's next governor. Let me introduce them to you now. First, Matt Dunn of Heartland. Chris Erickson is from Chester. Peter Galbraith, Townsend. Sue Minters from Waterbury. H. Brooke Page lives in Washington, Vermont. Candidates, welcome to you all. The format for tonight is relatively straightforward. Questions will come from me and also from VPBS viewers who have sent them in during the past week. Candidates each have 1 minute to answer these questions. Now, there may be a follow-up and rebuttal time devoted to each topic. We'll take that as it goes. And at the end of our hour program, there will be a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate. Laura Walsh is our timekeeper here, and she'll keep everybody on schedule. And once again, welcome. Let's get right to the first question. Folks, there's been a lot of news this week. We'll go right to the week's news about renewable energy and the siting of renewable energy sites. Some bickering back and forth between you. But let's throw it out for all 5 of you to get on the record here tonight. Define your vision of the role of renewables in Vermont's energy future. And while you're doing that, tell us if local communities are given enough input into the siting of these sites, wind, solar, and should they have as much, and should they essentially have veto power? And we're going to go left to right to begin. Matt Dunn.
Well, thank you for the question, because climate change is the biggest threat to our world. And in Vermont, we're feeling it right now. We want to make sure that we're protecting this thing we call winter. And the role of renewable energy is absolutely critical. And for me, that includes solar, hydro, and wind. What I believe, though, is that we need to do it in the Vermont way. We need to make sure that there is community involvement, and we need to make sure that we have a chance to reach out to those communities and make sure that they feel that they have a voice. I've made it very clear all along, even though some people say that it's changed, it's been on the record and very clear, that I believe that a community should have an affirmative vote before you go forward with a wind project. Now, I still believe that the renewable energy projects like that should go through a 248 process. But what I will do as governor is work with those communities, make sure we come to consensus, and then be able to move forward with more renewable energy in Vermont.
Chris Erickson.
The answer to that question is on one of my issue videos, which are now at the United States Marijuana Party website, the U.S. Marijuana Party. The reason the issue videos are moved over there is because the Vermont Democratic Party leadership has conspired to exclude me from the majority of debates and forums. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Vermont voters signed petitions to put my name on the ballot, and they have essentially been disenfranchised by me being excluded from debates and forums. So because they were essentially disenfranchised by me being excluded from debates and forums, I made issue videos at SAPA TV, which is Community Access TV in Springfield, Vermont, and then I moved them over to the U.S. Marijuana Party website on the internet.
Thank you very much. Mr. Galbraith, renewable energy in Vermont's future and the siting.
This is the clearest difference among the candidates. I am opposed to new industrial wind projects on Vermont's ridgelines, and I will use all the powers of the governor of Vermont to stop these projects. The reason I'm against them is because of global climate change. The ability of species to adapt requires them to move to higher elevations, and these industrial wind ridgeline projects are destroying the most pristine and precious places in our state. I said it was a very clear difference. I'm against destroying the ridgelines for corporate wind. Sue Minter is in favor of destroying at least some of the ridgelines, and Matt Dunn's positions have shifted with the wind. Now, global climate change is hugely important. I worked on the first treaty to deal with it. And I'm in favor of other renewables, solar, and I want to meet our renewable energy standards with solar, properly sited, and with hydro.
Thank you very much. Sue Minter.
Good evening. I'm so privileged to have served Vermonters as a legislator, the Irene Recovery Officer, and as the Secretary of Transportation. I am so pleased to be asked this important question because for me, the issue of climate change is critically important, not just now, but to the future. We all saw in Irene the impact of global climate disruption. I was appointed to serve Vermont on President Obama's White House Climate Task Force, meeting with leaders across this country dealing with climate disruption. It's not just here, it's real. It's why Bernie Sanders invited me to testify in Congress, talking about infrastructure needs and climate change. And yes, I am going to move forward to meet our renewable energy goals, 90% renewable by 2050. And this is so important because we have to reduce our reliance on carbon emissions. We have to move towards energy independence. We have a great renewable energy economy, and this is about good jobs, lower carbon footprint, and for me, I have to say, I'm very surprised by Matt Dunn's 11th hour flip on this important issue and his commitment to our environment.
We'll spend some time on it, but first, Mr. Page, renewables in Vermont's future and the siting of those.
Very good.
Brutal.
I think that it's sad that we've decided to despoil our ridgelines and our meadows and fields for projects that in the end increase our carbon footprint. The selling of the RECs off to Massachusetts and Connecticut have sullied any opportunity we had to make advances on climate change. I think it's unspeakable to subject the people that live near the industrial wind sites to what appear to be potential health hazards. The same health hazards it's speculated are also experienced by the wildlife that live in close proximity. I'm not only in favor of a moratorium on industrial wind, but also for remediation for those who live too close and are being subjected to more than 30 decibels outside or 25 decibels inside. And I believe that the projects should be controlled to keep from preventing the project's neighbors from being.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
I'll just stop.
Mr. Dunn, do you want to address the accusation of flip-flopping and you lost a key endorsement this week? You say you haven't changed. Others say you have.
I have not changed. And in fact, what you're hearing on this stage and what you heard this last week is frankly what's wrong right now in Vermont and why Vermonters have lost trust. I've been committed to renewable energy, including wind, and I've also been committed to making sure there was more community involvement. I wanted to get out my message on specifically what that meant because climate change is too important to have vague positions on these critical issues. Unfortunately, I mentioned that I was taking the Shumlin standard. The governor said that I wasn't telling the truth, and within 15 minutes, someone posted a video with him giving the exact same position. That's what's wrong, and that's why Vermonters are ready for a fresh start. I am absolutely committed to getting to 90% renewable by 2050. I've worked on billion-dollar infrastructure projects in the last 8.5 years, including digging up roads and sidewalks in entire communities. And what I know is the best way to get there is to work with the community, and you need to be able to say to them, I am going to listen and I'm going to act based on your response. And that's what I think Vermonters want. And I believe that this approach will actually get us much more renewable energy, including wind, than the approach today.
So Mr. Dunn says he hasn't flip-flopped. Do you believe him?
Well, I think it's important to ask the people who have been focusing on this issue, ask the legislators who came out to support me today when I was endorsed by the Vermont conservation voters. So the two chairs of the Natural Resources Committee in the House and Senate both came to speak on my behalf because they worked so hard to, yes, let's listen to the concerns of the communities. Let's focus on engagement and planning. Let's help communities decide where they can site facilities. That's what's critical. And it's why Bill McKibben decided to change his endorsement of Matt Dunn to Sue Minter. He knows that Sue Minter is someone who will stand up for her principles, who will fight forward, and who can be trusted to maintain her position and commit to a renewable energy future energy independence at a time when we need it so badly. We must stand strong.
Mr. Galbraith, you said it looked like you wanted to get in here.
Well, let me just say, on Friday, Matt Dunn put out a statement. He said that if a town voted no to a new wind project, that he would use all the powers of the governor's office to stop it. Today, he calls me and says, I misunderstood. All the powers apparently don't include the power of proposing a law or signing a law if that's necessary. So I would say it was one position on Friday, a different position today. And that, to me, is really a significant change in position. The point is that these projects are not green. The renewable energy credits are sold out of state to Connecticut so that Connecticut utilities and industries can continue to burn fossil fuels and then declare their energy to be green. My view is that if Connecticut wants to have green energy, it could put the wind turbines on those precious Connecticut hills. Vermont should not be the dumping ground. And furthermore, these do almost nothing about climate change. They're equivalent of one small snowstorm in New York.
Mr. Page, is there a difference between where we put wind towers and where we put solar panels?
I think there is, but more importantly, I think it's...
And local involvement and where they go?
Yeah, the crime of all of this is that we don't need industrial wind or industrial solar to meet the objective of 90% renewable, excluding transportation, not by 2050, but by 2018. And I think the opportunity still exists to have a third cable strung as part of the New England Clean Energy Link, which is the cabling that's coming under Lake Champlain from Quebec Hydro. Each of those cables carries 500 megawatts of power. And if a third cable was dedicated to terminate the power at Ludlow, this would provide all the power that we need to make the 90% number and would replace all the power lost by the decommissioning of Vermont Yankee.
Okay. Last chance on siting of renewable energies in communities. Okay.
Well, I think I'd like to point out that why it is so critical that we continue to advance our clean, green energy future. It isn't just about a moral imperative to address climate change. It's actually an economic opportunity. You know, we have one of the fastest growing sectors of our economy is the green economy, the energy efficiency, renewable energy, 1 out of 17 Vermonters. This is about economic development, it's about energy independence, and it's about reducing our carbon footprint, and it's critical to all of our futures.
2 quick responses here.
As a diplomat, I worked on the very first convention to deal with global climate change, the 1987 Montreal Protocol. And I can tell you that the problem is called global warming. We talk about the warming, but there's that other word, global. It needs to be dealt with internationally, and that would be the advantage of having a governor who has some international experience. But what we're doing is destructive and not making a difference. The largest wind farm in Vermont is the equivalent of, reduces the equivalent carbon that is emitted in 11 hours in New York traffic. One good snowstorm would do as much good.
Mr. Dunn, last word.
Yeah, I just think it's, if people actually look at the past comments that I've made on this, there is absolute clarity that I've been consistent, that I believe that there should be a vote by the community that is hosting the turbines and that we should move forward at that point. But I would also say that people should look at our platforms and go to our websites, because we have the most aggressive plan for reducing carbon in the state of Vermont. I am absolutely against the pipeline on the western side of the state that will leave us with stranded costs as we move away from fossil fuels like frack natural gas, and to be able to do efficiency work across the state.
Thank you. Speaking of rural development and a controversial issue recently, let's talk about the EB-5 program. Was this a program too good to be true? Was there enough oversight? And how does it look in the future for Governor Page?
Very good. From the very start, years ago, when I first heard about the EB-5 scheme, that we were somehow getting wealthy foreigners to exchange $500,000 in cash for up to 4 green cards. It just seemed like the wrong thing to do. I think that some of the investments were very sound, but certainly the projects up in Newport and the projects over to Burke represent the very worst. You know, you're building massive projects that are not right-sized for the community, and you're basically trapping investors who are desperate to get their families out of third world hellholes, to get their families here, and they really don't care about the investment, and it's just a bad thing, and it enriches the lawyers who were involved in the process as much as it did for the promoters who took the cash.
Thank you very much. Sue Minter, we're going to go this way.
Well, what I want to say under a Minter administration is this will not happen again. This alleged fraud is outrageous, and we need to continue to build trust and economic development. It's why I went to visit folks in Newport, why I had meetings with local leaders there to talk about what are the opportunities for the future so we can get on this and use this crisis as an opportunity for economic development in the area that needs it. And I also want to mention that I think it is truly disappointing to me that Matt Dunn has made a deliberate attempt to misinform voters about my record, and I see this as a smear campaign. Matt knows full well that the contract he has brought forward and allegations against me was a contract that was not connected to EB-5, which he is alleging or considering including as the idea. It is a contract that has been done routinely. It is a standard contract. And frankly, I'm disappointed and surprised that we are seeing Washington-style tactics being used here in Vermont to smear my record.
Mr. Galbraith, EB-5.
The EB-5 scandal is the classic case of the nexus between money and politics in the state of Vermont. The two alleged fraudsters gave $74,000 to Governor Shumlin and to the Democratic Party, essentially to support Shumlin's campaign contributions. Over the same period of the time, the state exercised no meaningful oversight over these projects in spite of numerous red flags. The governor actually took a trip to China and Vietnam paid by the fraudsters, where he basically was advocating their project. I called for an independent commission appointed by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to ensure its independence, to investigate the state's role in this. And with regard to the contract that Sue Minter signed, I don't understand why Ariel Quiris, who has no experience in running an airport, should have been given a contract to run an airport. But I don't want politics to go into it. I want an independent commission to investigate it.
Chris Erickson.
I covered the EB-5 foreign investment program in some detail in videos, which I made again at SEPA Community Access TV. And I made the videos there again because the Vermont Democratic Party leadership excluded me wrongfully from the majority of debates and forums. And then those videos were moved over to the U.S. Marijuana Party website. And I want you to know that if I lose the Democratic primary election, I will be on the November 8th, 2016 general election ballot for the U.S. Marijuana Party. Now, the EB-5 foreign investment program has incredible potential to do so much good. And we need to focus on the good things about the program. Democrats are focusing on the bad things and not looking at the good things that can be done with the program.
Mr. Dunn.
Sure. The Jay-Peak EB-5 scandal has rocked this state, and it is the biggest scandal that we have seen in a long time. And when it came forward that there was going to be a full SEC investigation and charges filed, all of us called for transparency, including Sue, who called for the releasing of all materials and all emails related to that particular scandal. And I was disappointed to find many months later that there was a contract that was signed between Sue Minter and Ariel Quiris for the contracting of the airport. Now, I don't claim to be an expert in airport contracts, and as anyone would see, what we did was ask a series of questions that I think is perfectly reasonable. What was the process in evaluating the partner in that particular contract? What due diligence was done? Because even at that time, people like Tony Parmelo had decided not to do business with these folks, and there were other warning signs. And I think it's just a perfectly reasonable question, and we still haven't gotten an answer.
Sue Minter, your name has been invoked a couple times here. I'm going to give you a little rebut time.
Well, I think I will say once again that I am really disappointed that this contract is being used, and Matt is deliberately trying to mislead the public to suggest in some way that I'm anyway connected to these fraudulent activities. This is not an EB-5 project. This is a project which is part of the development of the Newport Airport. We have retained the fixed-based operator who had always been in place there, an excellent operator. And the goal had been to grow not only the runway and make safer opportunities, but it's about economic development. And I'm proud of my record of investing. We had $8 million of federal dollars invested into expanding a runway, creating more opportunities for tourism, more for economic development. And this is actually seen as a success. No EB-5, standard contract, no smearing of my record.
Last chance. Go ahead, Mr. Galbraith.
Look, what I don't understand is why the contract wasn't with the fixed-based operator who had been doing it, why it was done with Ariel Quiros, who had no experience with running an airport. But I don't think this is appropriate for politics. I don't think questions should be directed to Sue Minter in a context of political campaign. That's why I genuinely think there ought to have been, and there ought to still be, an independent commission to look at whether the state properly carried out its oversight responsibilities. Let's not make this a political football. It's much too serious.
You want a last word, Sue? I mean, Chris.
Chris, yes. Years ago, I bought the domain, about 8 years ago, the domain eb-5.biz. And the reason I bought it was I had learned about the EB-5 program. I made a video on CCTV, Public Access TV in Burlington, to explain to people what the EB-5 Foreign Investment Program was. I did that in 2008. And since that time, ski areas got all kinds of money, but I couldn't find any investor myself. And in 8 years, I haven't found any investors. And I have a really good idea. People complain about solar farms being ugly, and what I would like to do is take some of the electricity from each solar farm and make holographic holograms, so that when you're looking at the solar farm, instead of seeing a black field, you're seeing butterflies or snowflakes or fall leaves, and then put up, you know, like ice cream stands or whatever, and have them as tourist attractions. So instead of the solar farms being ugly, they would become tourist attractions, because you would use part of the electricity to make the holographic holograms to cover them up.
Really quick, last word here.
Sure. I think it's important, though, that people see how that airport ended up. And in the context of economic development, there were businesses that were encouraged to move there, that there would be infrastructure and permits, and those never came through. And in fact, those businesses had to close up shop after the fact. So I think there's lots of questions that still remain regarding that airport in particular, as well as the circumstances around awarding it to someone who was already looked at as someone who might not be in having the best interests of Vermonters at heart.
Speaking of economic development in rural areas, I'm going to go to an audience question that actually we've got a number of this, and we talked about it yesterday too when the Republicans were here. And Liz Ruffa of East Dorset wants to know, do you, very quick answer, quick question, do you as governor plan to finish the job and actually create 100% internet and cellular coverage statewide? It's something we've been talking about every election cycle lately. It never seems to get done. We're going to start in the middle and move outward. Mr. Galbraith first.
Well, I would very much like to do it, but before we can do that, we need to tell the truth about where there is internet and broadband. Because basically what happened was, with the American Recovery Act, the stimulus plan in 2009, the state got very large contracts to expand internet. And companies were given the contracts, and they would get the money once they'd completed what they said they would do. And of course, they then self-reported that it was mission accomplished. They got the money, but it wasn't mission accomplished. In the Senate, I offered an amendment to the telecommunications bill to require truthful reporting. I have to say it was voted down 29-1. But I would like to, I think it's essential that we move forward and provide broadband and cell coverage around the state because it is the infrastructure of the 21st century. With that infrastructure, professionals can live in the state of Vermont and work from home. It's good for the carbon economy, but it's really good for our state economy, and that's what I'd like to do.
Chris Erickson.
Yes, again, I'd like to ask voters to take the time to watch the political issue videos that are on the U.S. Marijuana Party website and remind you that if I lose the Democratic primary because the Democratic Party leadership wrongfully excluded me from the majority of debates, that I will be on the November 8th general election ballot for the U.S. Marijuana Party. Now, as to this specific question, so many Vermonters cannot afford Wi-Fi or broadband. They cannot afford the modern internet unless it's covered by the Lifeline telephone program. And that is so important for low-income Vermonters. There's so many jobs you can get working on the internet, but they can't get them if they can't afford the internet monthly charge. So it should be covered by the Lifeline program for low-income Vermonters.
Mr. Dunn, is the last mile something we'll ever get to?
It absolutely is. And if broadband is your issue, then I'm your candidate. And I haven't just talked about it. In the legislature, we did the first broadband grants to get rural broadband out in the early 2000s. But that's not good enough. Over the last 8.5 years, I've been at Google. And from there, I've been bringing high-speed internet to communities all over the country. And it's easier to talk about than to do, but I know how to get it done. And it's going to take three things. One is regulatory changes to make sure that you can do things like pole attachments to get broadband out to almost the last mile. We then have to invest in cooperative fiber so that multiple providers can use the same fiber. It's the same thing that we did with electricity when the market didn't allow us to get all the way out into rural communities. And then finally, we use low-frequency spectrum, which you use to get your UHF and VHF television on to be able to deliver broadband over the airwaves and actually deliver cell phone coverage to the entire state as well. We can get it done.
Very good. Sue Minter, can we get it done?
Yes, and on the point of rural economic development, I want to underscore once again that the work that was done at the Newport Airport has actually become an economic development opportunity for Newport, and I encourage people to talk to the officials there. $8 million of federal investment. And let's just clarify that the fixed-based operator, Lakeview Aviation, continued operating the airport. The contract for $56,000 not-to-exceed contract was simply to enable Q Resorts to continue to build hangars and a new terminal to bring Border Patrol. These were great opportunities that did not come to pass. Before I signed any contract, I made absolutely sure this was not EB5 project. I made absolutely sure there was no risk to the state and no harm was done. In fact, economic development has become a greater opportunity, not just at this airport, but at other airports around the state and at communities where we have invested to create private sector opportunity and partnership.
Thank you. Mr. Page, the question on the floor is internet and cell coverage.
Very good. I always say that on the internet superhighway, I'm about 5 miles off on the dirt road that goes beyond it. I never expect to have high-speed or to have broadband service. Fairpoint did a valiant job trying to get me off of phone modem and onto DSL service, and after spending thousands of dollars, they were able to get me to 128 KPS, and finally said, how about if we just give it to you for free? And I went with that. Pictures on my computer take about 15 seconds to upload. And I think the important thing is not to get the last mile so everyone is connected. I think that it's too great a financial burden. But if we can get every major town connected, which I think they already are, and smaller towns connected, that'll be sufficient. I think that there is a satellite internet that's becoming available, and that'll have to serve for those of us who are really out at the end of the road.
Thank you. If you're just joining us, my name is Joe Marone, and this is Vermont PBS gubernatorial debate, the Democratic candidates for governor. Last night we had the Republicans here, and if you missed that, it will be on actually Thursday night at 8 p.m. the governor candidates, the GOP. This debate here actually will be repeated Thursday also at 7. So if you've missed it once, catch it again. Candidates, if elected, you've got 2.5 months to put together a budget and prepare it to the legislature. Put together your cabinet, put together a budget. By all indications, Vermont's budget has been growing 5% annually the last few years, but population growth has not kept up with that. State product has not kept up with that. What is a budget for Governor Minter going to look like in January when you present it to the legislature?
Well, number one, it will be a balanced budget, just like I have been working to balance 6 times a $600 million transportation budget, very complicated federal and state dollars. This is what I have been doing. I was on the Appropriations Committee in 2008 dealing with a real budget crisis when the Great Recession hit, and we needed to make very difficult choices. One thing Vermonters know is that I've done this. I've been here, even in the greatest difficult times. You know, with the transportation budget, there were 6 years when we didn't know whether the feds were actually going to come through with their budget, which is 60% of our budget. We had to look at all kinds of scenarios. What happens if we didn't get the federal money? Where were we going to have to reduce? And if we did, where were we going to increase? There are many parts to our state budget. And I have been someone who has actually reviewed all of them in the Appropriations Committee and dug deeply into balancing budgets every year as Transportation Secretary. It takes experience to know how to get the job done. I've got the experience and skills to lead us forward with a balanced budget.
Mr. Page, do you?
Yes, I think everyone that's watching has a home budget, and budgeting is normally taking a look at what's coming in and figuring out what your expenses are and kind of leveling that all out. I think that the state legislature and the governor's office need to learn a lesson from that. Both here and the Republican candidates keep talking about having further increases in spending and further increases in taxation. And I think that we should kind of draw a line in the sand, not only as far as additional taxes, but additional spending for a period of time. I think that 5% or better can be found in efficiency within government. And I think that maybe there's a number of programs, and especially in the Department of Commerce, that can be reassigned to those who are the benefactors of that. I think that, you know, I'm tired of seeing my friends, my neighbors, the folks at church being taxed out of their homes and taxed out of the state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dunn.
So I've served on the Appropriations Committee in the Senate and in leadership in the House. I've overseen a 6,000-person public organization and been in the private sector as well. And it is so critical that we get on top of the budget in the state of Vermont, because what we're doing is having a huge deficit. We're cutting frontline workers, we're cutting programs to the most vulnerable, and then we're raising taxes, and that happens year after year. So what I'm going to do is start with a needs-based budget. Look at what the needs are in the state, and then bring together folks to be able to create a plan so that we get on a sustainable path. I will not balance the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable, and I will not be going year to year cutting back on critical services like mental health services and early child care support. We need to make sure we have a budget that works for all of Vermont, and I look forward to bringing that team together to create a sustainable one.
Chris Erickson, state budget.
Yes, you also mentioned the population. We have a decreasing school population, and that's a big issue with the state budget. Now, as to the decreasing school population, I want to talk about adoption instead of abortion. I have received hundreds of postcards. This is one from Mr. and Mrs. William Scott from North Ferrisburgh, Vermont, and they talk about the Constitution guaranteeing the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The National Pro-Life Alliance wants to focus on adoption instead of abortion because of the population reduction, the reduction in the number of school children. The groups like Planned Parenthood have placed the price of life as the price of an abortion. If a low-income family could adopt at the same price as an abortion, rather than paying thousands and thousands of dollars to adopt, then more low-income families who can provide a roof over a child's head and food can adopt.
Thank you. Mr. Galbraith, the state budget.
a Galbraith budget is going to repeal special interest tax breaks and corporate giveaways. I'm going to take $28 million of these special interest tax breaks, things like the $1 million tax break for those who own private jet airplanes, and I will apply that special interest money, the savings, to making it possible for every Vermont high school graduate to attend all 5 Vermont state colleges for 4 years without paying any tuition. A Galbraith budget will fund essential public services, and a Galbraith budget will include funding, along with a way to pay for it, to start the process of continuing toward single-payer health care, beginning with universal government-sponsored primary and preventive care.
I heard some specifics just there with Mr. Gao. Does anyone else want to weigh in on specifics? Where are we spending too much and what are you going to cut? What deficiencies do you see that we're going to increase spending? Mr. Page.
One of the big areas, I used to be in industrial sales and had to deal with state governments as far as their purchasing. And Vermont has very, very loose purchasing requirements, and there's very little as far as consolidation in order to find cost savings from whatever volume that we're buying. This is one big area that we could find. There's numerous places where we can find small savings here and there. I think consolidation of IT would be another area where not only consolidation of IT, but also not having to buy the hardware for IT.
Deficiencies or excesses?
I use my budget to actually look at all of the opportunities for strategic investment to spur in private sector opportunities for growth. What am I talking about? In Barre, we had $19 million of public investment in infrastructure, water, sewer, wastewater, a new main street while I was transportation secretary. 6 years later, we have leveraged over $45 million of private investment, 350 new jobs, 27 new businesses. That's what public investment and my budget will focus on. How do we grow livable communities?
Chris, what are you going to cut or what are you going to spend more on?
Yes, if you vote for me as a Democratic candidate for governor, I guarantee you that I will not spend $1 of taxpayer dollars on websites like the healthcare website, products or services without a money-back guarantee. Hundreds of millions of dollars have gone down the healthcare website without a money-back guarantee. You wouldn't buy a new car, Joe, for $50,000 or more, whatever your personal budget is. You wouldn't buy a new car without a money-back guarantee. We've got to stop spending taxpayer dollars on websites, products, and services without a money-back guarantee.
Mr. Dunn, are you going to cut anything?
Well, we certainly can do better on IT. It is obscene that we spend $250 million on the Health Connect website and it still doesn't work. And I actually think we're spending too much money on IT that isn't actually functioning for state employees or for Vermonters. I have the team and the experience to be able to get that done. But it also is important to fix the Health Connect website so we can get back on the path to universal health care reform. Cost of health care is going up $650,000 a day in the state. It's accounting for the majority of the deficit. We need to get on top of that so we can get to a sustainable budget.
Last word, Mr. Gao.
Yeah, look, I think it's striking that 4 months into this campaign, neither Matt nor Sue have identified one special interest tax break or corporate subsidy they would give away. Are they really for the sales tax exemption for people who own private airplanes? Do they really think cloud companies should get the $4 million tax break? Rich people who own municipal bonds? That we should be giving millions to Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, which thanked the state of Vermont by moving its coffee buying business to Switzerland so it wouldn't have to pay Vermont taxes, pay the taxpayer back? That's a good question.
Mr. Dunn wants to scrap the Health Connect website. How about the plan itself?
No. I want to be
I'm
clear.
sorry.
No, we have to fix it.
Fix the Health
because
Connect.
it is
Let's
a mess.
talk about Health Connect itself.
Yeah.
Starting with Mr. Galbraith. Is it you? I think I know your answer, but let's hear it.
If it is not fixed by the time I take office, I will scrap it because obviously we've spent millions and it is not working. I'll move either to the federal exchange or to a multi-state exchange. But what I want to do is to move to a system of universal government-sponsored primary and preventive care so that everybody can see a primary care doctor without having to pay insurance, premiums, co-pays, or deductibles. This will lead to better health outcomes. It will save the system money. And unlike my competitors who talk about their health care plans, I'm going to tell you how I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it with a 2% payroll tax on employers. This is something that it's a deductible business expense to the employer, which means the federal government picks up the cost. And furthermore, employers would see a reduction in premiums because the state would be picking up part of their health care expenses.
Sue Minter, Health Connect.
Yes, well, I want to say that health care, I believe, is a human right, and we must continue to advance on health care reform. Number one, we must make Vermont Health Connect fully functional, not only to serve its clients, and I'm one of them, but to restore trust in government, which has been truly undermined. Second, we have to address the rising cost of health care. It is really the rising cost of health care that is crippling our family budgets, our school budgets, and putting on increasing property tax pressures, and also our state budget. So my goal is to reform health care payments to make sure we are incentivizing health and outcomes and not more payments, prescriptions, and procedures. We need to also get back to the discussion around single-payer universal health care. I'm excited about the possibility of increasing Dr. Dinosaur to age 26 or looking to universal primary care. We've got 2 studies to evaluate, and I'm excited about either one of those.
Mr. Page, are we keeping Health Connect?
Vermont Health Connect is dead. Take it out back and shoot it and put it out of its misery. The Green Mountain Care Board should be closely there behind as far as I'm concerned. The state has filed for over 1,000 waivers from Obamacare over the past 4 years. And I think we could file for one more waiver to allow the Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Vermont to take over the small portion of the website services that they're not handling already. They're handling all the state and municipal workers. They're handling all employers with more than 50 employees. And it would not be a heavy lift for them to do the balance. I think one thing, since we're on healthcare, we wind up conflating healthcare insurance cost with the cost of healthcare providers. The drivers of the increases in cost is the healthcare providers, not healthcare insurance. Healthcare insurance is merely shared risk with the insurer taking a small portion for management.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dunn, Health Connect.
Well, it's interesting. In the past, people have wondered what having an IT background has to do with being governor. They're not asking that question anymore. The debacle with the Health Connect website and the back-end operations has damaged trust and has taken us off the road to universal health care that is so important for us to get back on. I have the background and the team that will get to work right away, look under the hood, understand what the problems are, whether it can be salvaged, and I hope they can, because we want to own the future of our healthcare exchange and the work that comes with it. But then quickly move to paying for public health and get away from the volume-based system we have now that it increases costs on a regular basis. Having served on the board of Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center for 3 years, I know how to be able to do that. And I also will then move us quickly to universal primary care so that everyone pays, but everyone gets a doctor.
Governor Erickson, Health Connect, Vermont Health Connect.
Yes. When we have education K through 12, we don't buy insurance. We pay taxes and we send the kids to school. We need a health insurance. We need to get rid of the insurance. We need health care without insurance. Get rid of the insurance. Just use the taxes to pay for health care the same way we pay for education, grades K through 12. You don't buy insurance to send your kid to school. You just pay for the education. The other thing I want to point out is that this is a mandate coming down from Obamacare, and I am also on the official election ballot for the Democratic primary for United States Senator, and Senator Leahy has refused to debate me. Senator Leahy does not believe in democracy. He should be ashamed of himself. He doesn't believe in democracy. He has refused to debate me. And that's an outrage, and he needs to be sent out to pasture. Vote for me, Chris Erickson.
I'm going to move on because we're actually running short of time. Speaking of public education. Perhaps we've got more questions in from the audience on any other topic than Act 46 and public education. You'd be surprised how many people want to close more schools and how many people are worried about losing their local control. So we'll start with an audience question from Jackie McEwen and Tom Gilbert, who's concerned about the local control and want to know what specific changes to Act 46 will you promote and support in order to keep Vermont's towns to remain their community identity and institutions and to thrive. And they also worry about enticing young people to raise their families all over Vermont. So we're worried about, they're worried about school consolidation and closing. And Chris, it's your turn to start.
Yes. What I would do if you vote for me as governor, as a Democrat, is make a program so that certified teachers can homeschool. Right now, just parents homeschool. Well, if just parents can homeschool, why can't teachers homeschool? Why can't a teacher put an ad in the newspaper and say that they would like to take in 6 children or 8 children and get paid per head? If the state is saying it costs $10,000 or $11,000 or $12,000 to educate a child, pay that money directly to the teacher. Let the teacher take insurance out of that budget. Let the teacher buy a van to pick the kids up and take them home. Let's get back to homeschools because it would be like one-room schoolhouses. We don't need to bus kids around. A lot of towns don't want to pay to repave roads. They want to go back to gravel and dirt roads. That's going to make it harder and more dangerous. Buses will be slipping and sliding, in the mud. Let's keep the kids at home. Let's homeschool kids with certified teachers.
Mr. Galbraith, what's the future of Act 46 with you?
We don't have an education funding problem in the state of Vermont. We have a property tax problem. And that's why when I was in the Senate, I put forward legislation that would have transferred part of the cost of education from the property tax to the income tax. And that's what I will do as governor. In fact, my commitment as governor is that I will not propose any increase in the education tax rate. Now, I'd like to come back to the question of health care, because health care costs are a big part of what's driving education. And one of the reasons for high health care costs is the extraordinary pay that goes to the supposed nonprofits that are providing health care in the state. Matt Dunn said he was on the board of Dartmouth-Hitchcock. As a member of that board, he approved the raising the pay of the CEO over $1 million a year. The CEO of the UVM Health Network makes $1.9 million. So my position is we'll save money by limiting pay for administrators to $350,000 a year.
So the third question on the table is Act 46.
I want you to know education is so critically important to me and to our future. Really, our kids are our future. As a working mom with 2 kids who I've helped through the public school and volunteered in school, I understand how critically important our schools are to our communities. They're the center of community. My dad and husband both serving on the school boards at different times. I know that we have a challenge in our state with declining student enrollment. Act 46 begins a very critical discussion all over the state. In my community of Waterbury, it's made good sense to change from a system of 7 different budgets, 7 different school boards for 1,800 people. But as I've traveled this state and met with many community members, schools around the state, I see that the differences are severe across our state. As governor, I will look to be flexible. I'm going to be appointing 4 new members of the State Board of Education. I think it is going to be really at the board level to see what districts provide, but I want to make sure we do nothing to undermine the fantastic schools we have.
Mr. Page, Act 46, property taxes, school spending.
Act 46, repeal it. Consolidation will have no good outcomes. It will not save us money. It will not improve the educational experience of our children, and it will take children out of the communities that they live in, and more importantly, it'll take control of this school experience away from the local community and away from the parents. I envision consolidation in the little town of Washington that I live in with the neighboring town of Orange, and to have kindergarten, 1st and 2nd graders being bused 15, 20 minutes one way in the summer or in the spring and fall isn't as big a problem as it would be in the winter time. And to have parents, especially those of modest income, being further away from their children if a medical emergency would come up, or there's a disciplinary problem or an education problem. It just would be unfair to have the parents further away from the school where their children are attending.
Thank you. Matt Dunn, last word on Act 46, please.
So I have long been a critic of Act 46, even before it finished passing the legislature, because I don't believe a one-size-fits-all solution works for Vermont. I had no problem with the extra incentives for the communities that had already been planning to consolidate for a long time and everyone went to the same high school, because that kind of consolidation is hard and it takes resources to do it right. But the 900 student target cap, whatever it is not right for all of Vermont. I do believe, though, we can do some things to reduce costs and to increase the benefit for our children. We don't need 60 superintendents for 78,000 kids. We don't need each school district doing their own payrolling or student records, and that can be rolled up statewide. And then we can look at the state as a system and do assisted distance learning, where a class that's being taught in one school can be taken by a child here, 2 children over here, and another one over here. And if we can tackle health care, if we can continue down the path to universal health care reform, we will do the most for reducing costs in education.
Thank you very much. Believe it or not, folks, it's time for our closing statements. And I'd like to remind you at home, there are many questions that we didn't get to today. There are twice as many that we didn't get to. I would invite you, please, go on these folks' websites, call them, write them. If you have a question, they are your candidate, your Democratic candidates for governor, and the primary day is a week from today. So if you have questions, please get answers from these folks. Closing statement, 1 minute each, and we drew lots at the beginning, and Mr. Galbraith, you are first.
I'm running to promote economic justice and to fight against inequality. And my positions come from conviction, and they don't shift with the wind, and everything that I propose comes with a plan to pay for it. So if you want a governor who will protect Vermont's precious mountains and forests, if you want a governor who will put forward a plan to provide 4 years of free tuition for every Vermont high school graduate at our state colleges, if you want a governor who had the courage to put forward legislation to pay for single-payer health care and who will continue the fight toward that goal, if you want a governor who opposes every special interest tax break and corporate subsidy, if you want a governor who will stand up against the special interests, if you want a governor who will be fighting for you, then I ask you to consider voting for me, Peter Galbraith, on August 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith. Mr. Page, you are next for closing.
Very good. I got into this race because I wanted to bring a message of constrained government and expansive personal liberty. I'm tired of seeing my friends and my neighbors and folks in my community being taxed out of their homes and having to flee the state to go elsewhere in order to find tax relief. I'm also tired of seeing the good citizens of Vermont treated like some lab rat experiment where we seem to do everything to the citizens to see what their maximum tolerance is as to taxation, as to school consolidation and taking their kids out of the community, as to health care, each of these areas, as to industrial wind where we're torturing our neighbors to see how much they can tolerate. And I think we just need to take a more moderate path. My name's Brooke Page, and I'm running for governor and attorney general on the Democratic primary ticket. If you want to learn more about me, www.brookepage.us. Brooke with an E, Page with an I. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Dunn.
The last 2 years have been difficult for Vermonters. We've been facing challenges all across the board, whether it's a failed Health Connect website that has derailed our health care reform, whether it's the deficits year after year that have cut programs to the most vulnerable, or it's the EB5 scandal in the Northeast Kingdom that has rocked our trust and had a real impact on the economy in that area. We need to have a fresh start. And I have really enjoyed over this long campaign engaging with Vermonters all over the state who want to have their voices heard and to be a part of moving into a new era. I got into this race because we need an economy that works for all Vermonters and all Vermont. We need to bring Bernie's vision, his passion, and his ideas back to where they all started here in Vermont. $15 minimum wage, equal pay for equal work, and moving down the path to universal health care reform. Please check out our websites. They will show you who has a plan to start on day one to move us into a new era.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Next up is Chris Erickson for close.
Hi, I'm Chris Erickson, and I was wrongfully excluded from the majority of Democratic Party debates and forums. U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy refused to debate me. I am on the ballot for 2 offices, for U.S. Senator and for Governor. I hope you'll go to the U.S. Marijuana Party website and take some time to look at some of my political issue videos. And if I lose the Democratic primary, because the Democratic Party is not democratic anymore, they do not believe in democracy anymore, they have excluded me from forums, and U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy refused to debate me, which proves he does not believe in democracy. If I lose the Democratic primary, fine, I will be on the November 8th general election ballot for the United States Marijuana Party. Look us up on the internet, the U.S. Marijuana Party. We will overgrow government.
Thank you, Chris Erickson. Last up is Sue Minter, closing statement.
I've been here working in the trenches for Vermonters through some of our toughest times. As a legislator during the Great Recession, as Irene recovery officer after the worst natural disaster in nearly a century, I ran the transportation agency making sure our roads and bridges are safe. I worked with the Obama White House to address climate change. I have been a mom putting my kids through public school and, like so many parents, worrying about college tuition bills. And now I've spent this year traveling this state, talking to Vermonters from Bennington to Newport, thinking about our challenges and our opportunities. I'm asking for your vote for governor, to ensure that Vermont students get tuition-free community college as a pathway to good-paying jobs, to make sure that we have common-sense gun safety and address climate change. Candidates make a lot of promises during elections. I have a long track record of turning promises into reality. You can count on me.
Thank you very much, Sue Minter. I want to thank all you candidates for joining me tonight for this Democratic gubernatorial primary debate. If you have not yet registered to vote, there's still time. The deadline is actually tomorrow, August 3rd. Then get out, exercise your right, and vote at the primary next Tuesday, a week from today, August 9th. For everyone here at Vermont PBS, I'm Joe Marone. Good evening, everyone.